And then with Tina, a completely different way, but profound safety changes that you've been leading the spearhead for this here.
Yeah, it started about 5 years afterwards, because at the time I was a project manager, so I knew a little bit about risk management, and I was really upset to find that the way Network Rail were managing risk at level crossings was really quite shocking. And nothing came out in the inquest, nothing. And then a few years later, we discovered a couple of documents that had been withheld from the coroner. And at that time, I approached Network Rail about them, and I spoke to the chief executive at the time and said, "Can I help?" And he said, "Become our user champion." And I wasn't quite sure what that meant, but I went off and I started talking to people in the industry. And instead of talking about percentages of risk reduction, which is what they focus on, I went straight into their hearts.
Of course.
And I just, you know, and I finish off with a photograph of Olivia taken a few months before she died, and she just looks so beautiful. And I just say to, you know, this could be your child.
Absolutely.
Or your, you know, family.
The changes that you've been part of making, so level crossing management is the first one. So just explain a little bit about how that's changed.
Well, back in the old days, level crossings were managed by all sorts of different people, maintenance and inspectors and whatever. And there was no one person that was responsible. So things started falling through the cracks, which is exactly what had happened with Ellesmere Station, where Olivia and Charlie were killed. And so we introduced level crossing managers. They are fabulous. They go out. There are about 100, 110 of them around the country, and they all look after a number of level crossings, so they know everything about that crossing. Yep. They get involved with communities to help with awareness. They work with communities to try and get them closed whenever possible. So they are the absolute linchpin of the change.
And this is very clever. This is geo-targeting. Extraordinary. So
yeah, it was a project that we started at the beginning of last summer, and it was just a trial. At the moment, we're still deciding whether it can go ahead. But what we did was, with a number of level crossings, when somebody approaches a level crossing and they're using social media,
which is very common,
yeah,
obviously.
And obviously phones are a big distraction, as we know. We wanted to alert them to the fact that they were approaching a level crossing. So as they approached the level crossing, a little message popped up on their news feed saying, "You're approaching a level crossing." And as they got closer, the message was a bit more urgent. Yeah. And then finally it was like, put your phone down and pay attention.
You've also managed, working with Network Rail, 1,000 level crossings have been closed down.
Yes, Network Rail realised that level crossings are the biggest risk to the public on the railway. And at
that station that you mentioned, you've also
we
got
had a bridge. We did, yes, we had a bridge put in, and that was actually forced on Network Rail. They weren't really very amenable to the things that we wanted to do, but they put magnetic locks and built a bridge at that crossing. So it went from being one of the most dangerous to probably, if you ever call a level crossing safe, probably one of the safest on the
Because the girls weren't careless. I mean, it was the circumstances that led to their tragic deaths were very confusing.
They were, yes, and at the time, the girls were focused on the train that they wanted to catch, which pulled through, and they stepped out. As soon as that train had pulled through the level crossing, they thought that it was safe to cross, and they stepped out and they were killed by an express train. Well, absolutely devastating.